And that is that one of the most important aspects, or periods of testing, is now beginning. The Valdrakken endgame server has been updated with some PvP and profession vendors, so you can now make a level 70 character, you can get it geared, you can start diving into the professions. This is really good. This is them setting up for PvP, Mythic Plus, and raid testing. And frankly, those are like some of the last things they need to test before they can launch the expansion, really. It's kind of crazy to think, but this expansion has, I think because it hasn't made any crazy bets like Torghast or any, oh dear, we've kind of reached too far with the Maw, right? Because it's not making those big, more risky bets, which does mean fewer back-of-the-box features, and that is unfortunate. But what they are perhaps buying with that is making the foundations of the game good again, making plenty of content, for the open world, the reps, that sort of thing, and just like executing on a uncontroversially good bit of WoW content. It doesn't need to be an uncontroversially brilliant bit of WoW content. We just need to not have loads of resistance when we're playing WoW. And I mean, thankfully, most of us can report from the beta, the game is not fighting with you the way that it has been for the last 2 expansions. So basically here, we are seeing the beginning of one of the, most important and also later and, final phases of testing. There's not too much else to say.
Yeah, so I talked about this a while ago. I think there is the only bet that they've made that they really have to... Okay, well, dragon riding is one bet. That's a bet. We'll see how it goes. I'm fairly confident in that bet, and that's more generic kind of gameplay. The only major bet in terms of what people are worried about at the minute is going to be the talent trees.
Yeah.
But we will talk a little bit about those later, because I think that bet has, despite all of my initial cynicism at the first waves back in like June, July, August. Let me try to remember the quote. They said something in the balance trade feedback that was something along the lines of, since, during Dragonflight development, our like design philosophy and talent trees have changed substantially.
Wow.
You can very much tell, because they are hell of a lot better than they were for the longest time. And they're basically all getting reworked, which we will speak about very shortly.
Hey, yeah. It's definitely made me think, like, we need to work out how we're going to do class content.
That will be difficult.
I mean, we did class content for Shadowlands. We should be able to do it for Dragonflight.
Yeah.
And maybe not, in depth for every class, but, the roundups, the picking a main, the stuff talking about the real big changes.
Yeah.
Because it does seem like there's more of that is relevant to talk about than we initially thought.
Yep.
It's somewhat, for a few classes, like it is somewhat beyond just codifying Shadowlands.
That's one of the other things they mentioned. They mentioned that specifically for balance, and I remember, did I talk about this last week? I think I did. But the wild mushroom being data mined a week ago or so, and going, hang on a second. The designers of a class in World of Warcraft during the beta very notably saw this problem with how the actual gameplay of AoE for a spec felt, going, multi-dot, one of your buttons multi-dots for you, and then Starfall, I guess? And then just, do whatever your filler. And they went, okay, well, what have we got in the tank? Wild mushroom's pretty cool. Can we bring that back? Yeah. Should we change it to make more sense for today's game and how to, make it feel a little better? Like, wait. Hell yeah. I'm like, wait, you identify class problem? Solve class problem? Within 2 weeks? 2 weeks? I'm used to 2 years. This is genuinely, completely unprecedented. How quickly they're going, yeah. And one of the other things, they talked about that specifically, and a couple other talents have added, which all seem pretty good, going, yeah, a lot of the feedback was this feels like Shadowlands, Bumpkin, instead of being new and exciting for Dragonflight. So we've made it new and exciting by adding these talents that change your gameplay. Or Twilight Zone, where are we? Is this the upside down? What in the good God's earth is going on?
Yeah.
Why are developers at Blizzard Entertainment able to identify problems and solve them on a reasonable time horizon during a beta, getting dangerously, in some cases, close to when it should release?
Because
I'm like, holy shit.
Mike Ybarra threw souls into the demon portal at the heart of the company so they have fuel again.
That's like the only fear is it turns out they've just been abusing them for like 120 hours a week. As long as there's no report that happened, then hell yeah, because whatever they're doing is actually literally working.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see if it lasts. Yeah, you're right. We'll see if it lasts. That's a thing where this is a very, very big problem that we're going to kind of realize where now, especially they're speeding up towards the end of September when we know pre-patch was leaked is supposed to be in October and then Dragonflight in November, which means theoretically, because you don't change, what do you call it? It's so much harder to change something once the game's out. Because you've got, like, theoretically, it's like, no, it's just easy, it's the same process. But you've got all these problems such as players have hands on a product that they paid for. And that's a big one. They're playing a product that they paid for. Now means you have a responsibility to them to not change that without good reason or without something, because if they start to complain, then you suddenly have a problem. You could have a $70 problem on your hands, more or less, as opposed to now where it's kind of more abstract to make the game good, which is a completely different level of problem. And then there's also the things such as balance, where it's like, and this is something that Yoshi P talked about, where they balance content around jobs, and this was fairly controversial. They balance content around jobs because if they see machinist not doing well in P8 Savage, as it's being excluded from party finders because it's too weak to actually pass the DPS check, then they go, okay, well that means that we take the boss health down. Because we can't change machinist. Because if we change machinist, then machinist is different in all content. Yeah. So once they've got like all of the classes locked in terms of their talents, in terms of the damage output, then they will lock all of the raid tests. That's why raid testing hasn't happened yet, I'm sure. Maybe because the raids aren't completely ready yet for testing, but classes are still in the works. So you don't want to fill your like testing with bad data. So you wait for the class to be finished, and then you start raid testing, and then you've got raid testing done, and then that's how you balance all the numbers. So this is this awful idea of like, oh, once it hits pre-patch, you can't make any big sweeping design changes after that because people have been sold on your game and whatever else. That's live, that's out in the world. And then once the expansion launches, and then especially once the raid launches, then that's going to be full on. We cannot make any major changes.
Yeah.
It has to be full emergency level for us to make any changes, even like balance changes. So I wish they would be quicker with that, and they should be quicker with that because they do let stuff languish really bad. Well, but it's like that's not an excuse, but that is a reason why we're seeing rapid changes now that are like, oh, feedback identified, solved. And then as soon as expansion launches will be, inevitably, because there's 38 specs in the game, it will be, let's use an old favorite, Shaman is broken. No one can play DPS Shaman because it does 20% less damage.
Well, that's what normal mode week is for.
Heroic mode week. And then they're like, say it happens in Heroic or in Mythic and World First, like, sorry, that was unexpected. We can't fix it. We have to wait till 10.1 to fix that. Sorry. And it might go to 10.2 because they have to redesign the spec or something. That's the awkward part where that kind of just, it's the reality of the situation, right? A lot of the time. At least that's how I think it's happened that way. Yeah. More or less.
Going through some other bits of news, which are pretty material in their impact. Well, the first thing is we've got the racial mounts for the Drakthir. They're called Vorquin. They almost look like a primalist, what are they called?
Horse.
I know, like the Celtic one. My brain's broke. It's not a unicorn. It's like a Kelpie.
Kelpie, yeah.
Kind of look like a primalist Kelpie or something.
I'm a weeb. I was just thinking Kieran.
And there's their armored versions, which also look pretty sweet. So, there's that. Now, the other thing. The Creation Catalyst has had a facelift, and this is something impactful because... so, if you go to the Benthic gear upgrade vendor in Nazjatar of patch 8.2 with a piece of patch, 9.2, Shadowlands Mythic Plus gear, you'll be able to upgrade it. Because that shit ain't vendor specific. That's just the upgrade UI. If you put PvP gear in there, it'll upgrade that. If you put Mythic Plus gear in, it'll upgrade that. It's just like that with the Creation Catalyst. So them retheming this to Dragonflight very much directly shows us that they are taking that same UI that we already know from the game And they are just going to make that work in the future. And you can hopefully rest assured, because they did comment on the catalyst saying that, they think that it was implemented too late.
Hell yeah.
So basically that just means it'll be carried forward, which you already knew, but it's nice to see the evidence. And we can expect it to be activated from an earlier date. The next thing beyond that then is UI. So here's an animation that we can...
these are so gorgeous.
Thanks.
Let that replay the Notion embedded video player.
Yeah, so boom. It plays like this nice animation.
Nice
you can
PDX.
see another effect here where there's like a sort of glimmer on unlocked talents that you can path to. So that all looks good. Let's just take a look at one or two.
Yeah, they're
just to
all the
see the
same
splash
idea of
effects.
the sigil and the color, but it's like they all work pretty nicely with the background art. It is a wee bit like it doesn't really matter, but it's nice UX.
Yeah.
And I still think that, and this is kind of a weird opinion, I think, mostly because I like looking at the talent trees and like running about and stuff and changing, but the fact that there's not a half screen version where you flick between the class and spec tree individually, I'm like, I don't really like the full screen thing, even though it works with like the art. Like it feels a bit wrong compared to the old talent tree. I hate to go back to back in the classic it was better, but like the old talent trees, if it's just two, like here's class, here's spec tree, that would be less satisfying for them artistically, and it would make it hard to look at the whole talent tree, which is fairly important. But I'm sure they could find a middle ground or something.
Yeah.
Again, I'm nitpicking, but yeah, it feels. UI is definitely getting a glow up in like the stuff they're physically capable of doing, which is the important part. Its capability with UI